So the honesty we're talking about today, the virtue of honesty, is not the honesty that when you say, I'm going to tell you how I really feel. It doesn't start like that. Because usually after that comes a spewing and letting out of uncontrolled emotions, upset, anger. And it's usually something we're sorry we've let go of so abruptly. The honesty we're talking about today comes from the connection we have with knowing what's really right and true for ourselves. And if something is right and true for us, it really has to be right and true for all involved. If we've really tuned into that place, that's what I really learned in working with people. If I get tapped in what's right and true and I'm honest, and I've really checked with Spirit and done my work, it's really right and true for everyone. Inside, we don't share the things that are difficult. Now, honesty gets difficult because we live really in two realms. The Buddhist teachings say there's two levels of truth. And I like this, I relate to this. It's all really the same. There's matter and energy, and in between there's awareness, but matter and energy. So we live in the relative level. The physical level is where the matter is. And in the relative level, honesty can be difficult because that level has paradox and opposites and difficulties, and it's heavy and it's confusing and it can be difficult. But the relative level is where we live. But our truth is where we came from, and that's the absolute. And the absolute is where true honesty is. That's what's unshakable, unchangeable, unbending. It doesn't depend on anything else. It's just the honest truth. God is all there is. Life is all there is. Whatever you want to call that word is all there is. And we are each an expression of that. That's the truth. So it's how do we learn how to balance the relative and the absolute so we can bring that light, the truth of honesty, into our experiences. That's what the goal is for us, to learn how to do that. And Pema Chodron, how many of you know Pema Chodron? She's like one of my favorite spiritual teachers. She lives in Nova Scotia right now, and she's retired. I mean, she's still, sending out her little words online, but she doesn't go do her workshops anymore. But I got the privilege of seeing her, and she's amazing and funny as heck. She's just the funniest thing. But she said she's an American-born Tibetan Buddhist nun, and she had a really, really difficult divorce in her early marriage when she had little kids. And she was angry, and she said she was mean, and she held on to grudges, and on and on and on. But then she got into the Buddhist teaching and found peace and understanding. Now, her kids didn't follow the Buddhist tradition that she did, but they were very open to wisdom. So she took her teenage children to her her Buddhist teacher, the one renowned Buddhist teacher that she really liked. And she said to her teacher, "Now tell my children something that would be meaningful to them despite their Buddhist background." And he said to them, teenagers, "You're going to die. And you won't take anything with you but your state of mind." You don't take anything with you but your state of mind. And that's true. That part of us is what goes with us always. And so I believe that it's about being aware. Honesty is being aware with ourselves of the general tendencies of our thinking. Because we're the only ones that really have control over our thoughts. We are the thinker behind the thoughts. So we have control there. And once we realize we have control to move our thoughts, we can find strength and purpose in ourselves and in our lives. So propensity of thinking, the general tendency of our thinking. Many people have a propensity for inadequacy. And I think of Deepak Chopra when I was first getting into metaphysics deeply, and I was reading Deepak Chopra's 7 Spiritual Laws for Success. He explained our habitual thinking as like a record, the grooves in a record when we had records then, but the grooves of thinking are like the grooves of a record, an album. And you get caught in these grooves, and they just become habitual. And then, so that inadequacy is just habitual. And some people have a propensity for being bothered. They're bothered by everything. And it just becomes a way of thinking and a pattern. And some people have a propensity for whatever other things, whatever inadequacies you want to fill in there. The thing is, propensities don't change themselves. They're stuck there until the mind says, I want a new record. I want something different. And you take that old record out and put a new one in. So we can learn the propensity for honesty, the propensity for love, the propensity for goodness. But it takes us making that decision to do something better. And there's lots of reasons why your mind is so much more open when you're honest, because you don't have to keep track of all the dishonest things you've said or done. It's much more available to the good stuff that's there. So we want to be thinking about that. And I mentioned last week that we need to make, something Ernest Holmes said, is we need to make our thinking worthwhile. Realizing that honesty and truthfulness and love and goodness affect all our relationships in the world, all of them and everywhere, the most intimate and even just, first one-time people we meet. It affects everything, the general tendency of our thinking. And with that, we have to be honest with ourselves, that we can take a good enough look at ourselves. I've got a couple of questions to ask, that we are mindful and aware. Because remember, I said that awareness is what keeps the relative and the absolute connected. That's what we need for honesty. We need the awareness. So here's some questions. There's sometimes, do you ever find times that it would be easier just not to tell the truth? Of course, we all do. But this is the questions to ask. Am I being honest with myself? With myself about my feelings, my desires, my challenges? Am I being honest about the general tendency of my thinking? Because it does have a wider scope than we realize. We have to be honest about that. Am I communicating honestly with others, even when it's difficult, in a kind and loving way? Kind and tactful way. Am I living with alignment with my highest truth? The highest truth that we can think of, that I think of, when I want to get myself in a better state, a more open and available state, I really think of the interconnectedness of all life. We've had Indra's net up there, the Hindu picture of Indra's net, where everyone is a pearl on this net and they're all connected and the light shines everywhere. We're an interconnected world. The chaos theorists right now, and we've heard this before and it's hard to believe, but they believe it, and so I believe them. They say a butterfly's wings flapping in the Amazon will have an effect on the weather in Europe. That's how far-ranging our energy is. That's how far-ranging, the same with our state of mind. When we think positive, good thoughts, when we think those, we don't know how far-reaching that radius of compassion and love can go. It goes the other way, too. We have to be honest with ourselves and be in control of our lives, that's how far it goes. Reverend Janet told me at our meetings and things that she keeps a picture that was taken from space of the world. She keeps that there as a reminder of our connectedness. She has that in her home and just looks at it. And of course, Edgar Mitchell was up there. He was the 6th man to walk on the moon in 1971. And he said when he came back, he had such an awakening to see that we live on one earth. And he saw all the pain that humans had caused each other were meaningless and arbitrary. He realized looking at that people on the earth, earthlings he called them, need to work together. And he felt he was changed for good forever. And then he came back to the earth. And he had to bump into his propensities towards building walls and making people wrong and doing all that. He had to relearn his thinking because that absolute experience had changed him. Now, we all have access to the absolute through our spiritual practices. And we need to be practicing so we can keep that interconnectedness right at the top of our minds, that we can remember we're in this together and change our perspective. When we open to the sacred, that's why we need that space without all those little webs of confusing things we've made up, but the truth. And when we do, we find a balance and equanimity, and I want to share this. This is how I want everybody to be able to think, because I want to think this way. Of course things go wrong in my life, but I don't suffer anymore because I don't get my ego hooked. I don't get my ego hooked. The master said, before enlightenment, I get a flat tire and I change the flat tire. After enlightenment, I get a flat tire and I change the flat tire. The difference is what's in the middle. I don't throw a fit if I'm enlightened, ideally. That's the difference. When we're honest with ourselves, when we get hooked into the absolute and recognize there's so much more going on, we don't have those little emotional fits as much. We still do because we're still human, but we get to live in a place of peace and understanding and recognize there's so much more going on, so much more. Brené Brown says integrity, which I equate with the honesty we're talking about, is choosing courage over comfort. It's choosing what's right instead of what's fast and easy. I have one other thing that is a reason to be honest. It keeps you vital, it keeps you alive, and it keeps you younger because you're in alignment with what's good and right and true, and your body's flowing. Whatever experiences are, it makes sense. And this is what C.S. Lewis says, integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. And do you know how when you do the good, right thing, how it feels? It feels so good to do what's right when no one's watching. Well, maybe one thing, but no one's really watching you. You're just doing it because it's from the goodness of your heart and soul. And Marcus Aurelius, this just really moved me. He said, when you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is. What a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, and to love. Now imagine what you feel like. Those times you feel like you're filled with vitality, with open thinking, with enjoyment and love. What happens then? Don't we feel more alive? Don't we feel more vital? And don't we feel like forever? Band. Kirk, are you sleeping back there? Okay, get up here. It's a segue time. I have a perfect segue, but you're not here. Okay. I'll just kind of make up some time when you guys are back there. That was good, but it's a time where we can be in a place where we feel that vitality flowing through us, and that's just as contagious as those little butterflies flapping their wings. You and I can have a state of mind that no matter what's going on in our life, not only can we handle it, and then there is potentiality and possibility available in every moment, but we are here. We have the state of mind to be forever young.